Now, you could say I'm quite late to the party with my breakdown for the latest teaser trailer for Season 3 of House of the Dragon, but there's a very good reason for it. I didn't want to make another reactionary video with time-sensitive stuff like trailer breakdowns. A lot of channels try and rush them out to be the first upload, and thus get a better chance of getting more views. And yet, I too have been guilty of that in the past. I think every channel has at some point. But I feel that sometimes it's good to let things settle and develop your thoughts about something like this, rather than simply reacting in the moment. And you know what? I'm glad I did, because some of the stuff in this trailer is absolutely wild. And I don't think this video would have been the same if I'd rushed it out. It's well known that I'm not a huge fan of the direction House of the Dragon has gone in, and while I know Season 3 is still going to be very different from the source material, there's still a lot of things I've seen in this trailer that I really liked. Frankly, as a trailer goes, it's been one of the better ones HBO have put out recently. One thing that's always important to remember with these kind of videos is that if I criticise House of the Dragon or say something negative that I don't like about it, doesn't necessarily mean I'm a book fanboy who can't deal with change. But at the same time, if I praise the show for doing something well and doing something right, doesn't mean I'm dick riding Ryan Condal or HBO. There's this grey area in the middle where I can still take issue with many of the things the show does, but enjoy other aspects of it. That is very much my relationship with the later seasons of Game of Thrones, specifically Season 5 and 6, where the quality noticeably started to dip, but there was still enough elements of it there for me to enjoy watching it in the moment. Now, the issue with House of the Dragon changing things so drastically from Fire and Blood is it's becoming quite hard to tell what some events might actually be, given the butterfly effect of the changes made. But I think we can piece together enough from this trailer to get an idea of what's going on. So Daemon's opening monologue is very interesting and has confused a lot of people, while much of Rhaenyra in this trailer focuses on the fall of King's Landing. The context of his language suggests this monologue happens prior to the Battle of the Gullet and the invasion. The phrase "our children will rule forever and a day" really speaks to this. Some have taken this to mean Daemon is talking about his children with Rhaenyra, Aegon and Viserys, but we must remember at this time, Jace is Rhaenyra's heir, with him betrothed to Daemon's daughter via Rhaenyra. So this statement still rings true regardless of who you're actually talking about. It's a really clever double meaning here, and something book fans will pick up on knowing the outcome of the dance. I'm very hopeful about the Battle of the Gullet for a few key reasons. Firstly, it's unlike any battle we've seen in Game of Thrones show before. What I'm really hoping for is something more akin to the Battle of the Blackwater, but of course with dragons. It also seems that Baela will participate in the battle, which is a huge change for her character from Fire and Blood. But I think a change that makes sense given how different her character is in the show, especially with how much more of an active dragon rider she is. In the book, her dragon Moondancer was too young to take part in many of the major battles of the war, only really coming into the fray at the end. But given what we saw of Rhaenyra in Season 2, the show's own logic kinda dictates she would be part of the battle. Plus, given her relationship with Jace, it makes sense, with the end of the battle having more of a sting in the tail if she's present. These shots of Rhaenyra, to a lot of fans, suggested we might be getting the Iron Throne rejecting her, but I don't actually think that's what's happening here. Firstly, this shot is supposed to mirror Season 1, with her walking to Alicent with baby Joffrey in her arms just after she's given birth. To me, it looks like she's walking to the Iron Throne. The blood on her feet is not hers. Likely, she's walked through some spilled blood in the hallways of the Red Keep, suggesting it's not the bloodless fall that Alicent and Rhaenyra intended. This is all very much supported by two shots later in the trailer. One of Alicent and Helaena trying to escape the Red Keep, which makes sense given her plan to hand over Aegon had failed due to the fact Aegon had already gone into hiding. I'm guessing Rhaenyra isn't going to believe Alicent wasn't in on it. We also have these shots of Damon in full armour fighting Green Guardsmen in the Red Keep, again supporting this idea the fall won't be that easy. So as much as I wanted this shot to be Rhaenyra's own blood from being cut by the throne, and thus rejected by it. I don't think that's what it is. In fact, I would be very surprised if Ryan Condal even includes this in the show, given the way he's handled Rhaenyra as a character. I fear the throne spurning her could, in his view, be more green propaganda, which is a shame, because things like this really do strip back the complexities of Rhaenyra as a character, the things that make her beloved by fans of Fire and Blood in the first place. She's an incredibly flawed but compelling character because of these things. I'm glad to see that they've given Ormund Hightower a more central role in the show, with both Aegon and Otto MIA, Aemond off doing his own thing with Criston Cole, and Alicent hardly even being a green at this point. The show badly needed a commanding authority figure on that side of the war. I couldn't quite picture James Norton as Ormond, but seeing him in action, I can totally see the vision here. Casting someone with his stature really does indicate how big his role's going to be in Season 3. I think we get a look here at Jon Roxton as well, and I do wonder if we will see any of the other bloody caltrops, especially since the likes of Unwin Peake go on to have a huge role in the history of Westeros. We still haven't gotten a glimpse of Daeron Targaryen or Tessarion, a very intentional move by Ryan Condal, given he knows one of the very few things the fans are truly hyped up about this season. I still find it very odd he's only getting introduced now in Season 3. This shot here gave me a lot of pause about exactly where it is. At first I thought this could be Tumbleton, as we know one of the huge differences from the book is Damon and Caraxes being there. But when you take a closer look, it still very much looks like the Riverlands, with Tully's, Vance's, and many other Riverlands houses here, being approached by who I'm assuming is the Winter Wolves. Damon is bloodied in the next shot, so the context of this suggests that it's after some kind of battle. The Red Fork seems unlikely. It would not make sense for Damon to be at the fish feed. So maybe Acorn Hall? A small minor battle that they wouldn't really have to go into that much detail with. Given we have Damon active in the Riverlands and the Reach during Tumbleton, it seems that Ryan Condal has listened to the fan backlash to his Harrenhal arc last season, and given Damon a lot more to do. The question is it too much to do? Does it make sense for him to be part of these battles? Only time will tell in this case. The dynamic between Aegon and Aemond is confusing. It really baffles me we've got to a point in which Aegon is more concerned about getting revenge on Aemond than, well, Rhaenyra. I really dislike the addition of Aemond's betrayal at Rook's Rest, and I really don't understand why they are making Aemond King Regent when that just isn't a thing. Aemond was only ever a Prince Regent in the book, and it makes a lot more sense for him to be one. I do, however, understand that given what Aemond is like as a character in the show, and his betrayal of Aegon, it would fit he'd want to be called King, even though he has no right to do so. But Aegon wanting to kill Aemond, where are they going with this? We know that's very unlikely to play out given the path of the story. I suspect this is clever trailer editing. I think Aegon will want to kill Aemond, but it will be Larys Strong who refocuses Aegon on his battle with Rhaenyra first and foremost. It would certainly give both Aegon and Larys more to do this season, especially when in the book during this time frame they both just go missing to the very plot twists at the end of the war. It seems that Aemond taking Harrenhal is also going to play out slightly differently than the book. However, I think that in this case it could be a good thing. I kind of dislike the fact that it's just so easy for him to do so in the book. We have these shots of Vhagar burning parts of the castle, which gives me Balerion the Black Dread burning Harrenhal during the Conquest vibes. It's unclear who Aemond talks to. I've seen many suggest it's Alice Rivers. However, given he's asking the person to draw their sword, I can't help but feel this could be Simon Strong. And rather than straight up beheading him as in the book, Aemond will give him a chance to defend himself. We have some shots of Criston Cole and Gwaine Hightower looking very worse for wear. It seems Criston is very aware of how bad the war has been for both sides, and the fact that there will be no winners come the end of it. I suspect over the course of the season, as he marches towards the Butcher's Ball, he will be more and more worn down and resigned to his fate. I know Criston in the show has been a very divisive character among fans, but I hope this new outlook for him leads to us seeing a glimpse at the Butcher's Ball of why he's remembered as one of the best Kingsguard knights to ever have donned the White Cloak. It would be very easy to frame Criston as a broken man at the Butcher's Ball, but I hope they give him some form of attempted redemption, even if that is simply just trying to save his own men. Now, we had the three most wild parts of this trailer. Damon of what I assume is at Tumbleton, the Skull, and the Birth. Some really crazy stuff that genuinely has left me feeling curious. In Fire and Blood, both battles at Tumbleton are crazy. The sheer amount of devastation caused to such a small town. The kind of battle that epitomizes what the Dance of the Dragons is. Now, when I first saw the leaks showing Damon was going to be present at Tumbleton, I wasn't thrilled. I'm not sure how you have him there and have him get out of that battle alive without derailing his plot or the Tumbleton plotline in Season 4. Daemon is not the kind of man who would run away when faced with impossible odds. I like Daemon in the Riverlands. I get why they've done this. I'm just curious to see how they're actually going to try and make it make sense in terms of Tumbleton. I think this shot of him is really important. I believe this is the moment of the betrayal, the turn. I think for the general audience, this is going to hit really hard. Having a character viewers care about be at Tumbleton for this moment, the jeopardy they are placed in elevates the viewing experience for most. For me, we really just have to wait and see how this all fits into the wider narrative. We have these shots of a skull in a fireplace, followed by Rhaenyra very distressed looking at the skull. I've seen on Twitter and Reddit a lot of people believed at first this skull to be Jace or Luke. However, that doesn't really make much sense. For me, there are two possibilities. This is most likely Viserys' skull, with his body being left to rot by the Greens, rather than burned in the traditional Targaryen manner, hence why the skull ends up in the fire, with Rhaenyra giving him a proper Targaryen end. I suspect before leaving King's Landing, Aemond has intentionally left the skull for Rhaenyra to find. There's also the possibility it's some sort of dream sequence, but option 1 is much more likely in my view. Nothing like this happens in the book. I think Ryan Condal could be doing this for one simple reason. To start to set up Rhaenyra's slide into paranoia as her mental health deteriorates over the course of the war. I mentioned before I don't necessarily think we're going to get the Iron Throne spurning Rhaenyra, at least not in the sense it's done in the book. I think we will see her cut herself on the throne, but it will be framed very differently, with it being less about what others think about it, but more about how it fuels Rhaenyra's growing self-doubt and indecision. Given how Ryan Condal has written Rhaenyra thus far, I don't think we'll be going full Maelor with teats in terms of a character shift, but perhaps a more grounded decline in her mental health as she loses control. I don't necessarily hate this approach, just there's a very fine line to walk, with it making it hard to get right. It's the kind of thing I could see being exaggerated in the history books, because that's exactly how history remembers a lot of kings and queens with clear mental health issues. I'm not going to call it green propaganda, because that is a whole other kettle of fish, but it does seem a more grounded approach. This shot of a woman giving birth is maybe the most talked about part of the trailer. Some are debating if this is in fact Helaena or not. I can kind of see why, because it's not immediately obvious it's Fia Saban. But this scene has been matched to costumes she's been seen wearing in leaked photos. So I believe this is in fact Helaena. Why is she giving birth? Are they really adding Maelor this late into the show? It would be a crazy move for Ryan Condal to do this, given the cutting of Maelor was one of the key reasons as to why George R. R. Martin and Ryan Condal fell out with each other. Yeah, they could introduce him as a babe during this season and the story would still technically work. It's just Helaena was certainly not pregnant at the end of Season 2, and mere hours will pass between Season 2 and 3. Her suddenly being pregnant is wild, if true. A little spoiler here. There are some ideas floating around that Helaena may die in childbirth rather than her book fate, as a way to absolve Rhaenyra from any role in her death. But we've seen nothing to suggest that's actually true. But here's the thing. This shot has intentionally been chosen to get people talking. I think there's more to it than meets the eye. Maybe this is a flashback to the births of Jaehaerys and Jaehaera. It could be tied into Jaehaera's story this season. We know they cast a much older child actress for what we assume is a dream sequence. Maybe this birth is linked to that. Maybe there's also a chance this isn't even Helena's flashback, but rather something to do with Aemond at Harrenhal. We know he'll be interacting a lot with Alice Rivers this season, and we saw from Damon in Season 2 what she's capable of. Maybe this scene is being used to manipulate Aemond in a similar manner. I've seen some speculation that if Helaena is really pregnant, that Aemond could be the father. But just again, the timeline here doesn't make sense for that to work. What do you think of Damon at Tumbleton? Who do you think the skull belongs to? Is the birth scene real? Are we getting Maelor? Did this trailer do anything to make you look forward to Season 3? Let me know in the comments.